Hello and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by HRBoost. My name is Kelly Schrage and today we'll be tackling the very relevant topic of burnout. Perhaps you are an employer who is struggling with the very real challenge of burned out employees, or maybe you are an employee yourself who is feeling stretched beyond your means. So either way, we have some helpful lessons and solutions for you in today's webinar. On our agenda today, what is burnout exactly? What causes burnout? We'll talk about the symptoms and how to recognize if you have burnout or if your employees have burnout, the overall impact of burnout on the workplace, and most importantly, we'll go over solutions today. So what is burnout exactly? According to the American Psychological Association, better known as the APA, burnout is a condition that is a form of physical, mental, or emotional exhaustion, and this is caused by constantly feeling overwhelmed and stressed. The APA also mentions this is accompanied by decreased performance and motivation and a negative attitude. So in 2019, the World Health Organization formally recognized burnout as a condition. But since then, everything has been exacerbated by the pandemic. People are experiencing layoffs, childcare disruptions, COVID trauma. So understandably, burnout has gotten worse since 2019. In 2021, nearly 76% of employees reported feeling work-related stress. And up to 28% of employees always feel overly stressed and burned out. If you think your employees are the only ones affected by burnout, think again. Burnout and job stress are estimated to cost businesses anywhere from $190 billion to $300 billion a year. This comes in healthcare costs, absenteeism, and poor performance, which we'll talk more about. The cost of dealing with turnover is detrimental as well. According to a study from UMass, 40% of turnover is attributed to job stress, and the cost of backfilling the recently departed roles account up to 120 to 200% of the position's salary. So this means doing some of the work upfront to battle burnout will cost significantly less in the long run than just ignoring the problem. So what causes burnout? Lack of control is one of the biggest contributors, and this comes in the form of perhaps lack of control over someone's schedule. Maybe they have no say in their hours or what days they're scheduled, or it changes every week. The type of assignments they're scheduled, perhaps lack of control over the type of work that they're doing, or maybe the type of work that they like to do. They frequently get changed to other kinds of work they're not as familiar with, and that can cause stress. Of course, heavy workload and long hours is a big contributor to burnout as well. If people are working on workloads that just are unreasonable for the amount of hours they work, that's going to lead to burnout. And of course, there are a lot of roles that require long hours that can really tire people out as well. Lack of resources is another factor that causes burnout. Perhaps people don't have what they need to get their job done, or it's very unclear where they go, or perhaps their manager or their supervisor or whoever could be helpful, a helpful resource in their role, just aren't as available. Unclear job expectations can also cause this as well. Perhaps there's lacking clarity around exactly what their role is and what they're expected to do, what metrics they're expected to hit, and of course that would stress out many of us. Another big factor is the type of workplace environment, and a dysfunctional one can cause burnout across the whole workplace. This can look like bullying coworkers or a manager who is micromanaging, a high level of conflict, lack of standardization and processes can cause this as well. Reactive environments can be a source of burnout, and unfair treatment. Perhaps a manager has a favorite and treats everybody else differently. That can be very frustrating. Of course, a high level of activity, if it's a chaotic work environment, can cause burnout as well. If you can think about certain professions where this might be a little bit higher, such as healthcare. No social support also is a big contributor to burnout. If you don't have a community to go to that can help support you when you're feeling burned out, if you don't have a coworker to step away and have a coffee break with just to maybe vent a little bit, release some frustration, this just means that that feeling of frustration and stress just continues to build, and there's no type of social support to help release that. Poor work-life balance also causes burnout. If people are working long hours and they don't have anything outside of work to take them away from all of their duties, then that can cause burnout. And of course, there are professions that are specifically subject to high levels of burnout just due to the type of work. So as we mentioned, you can think about nursing, education sees a high level of burnout, and of course, public service roles such as police or firefighters. So what are the symptoms of burnout? Fatigue, feeling apathetic towards work, tension headaches, perhaps irritability or being quick to anger, depressive feelings or a sad mood, changes to diet, disrupted sleep patterns or insomnia, lack of energy, difficulty concentrating, or we can often find people who are in burnout perhaps relying on alcohol or other substance abuse to help cope. With some good questions to ask yourself if you're not sure if you're feeling burnout, or questions to ask someone at the workplace if you think they could be burned out. Are you having more bad days than good days at work? Do you usually find yourself unusually low in energy or irritable at the end of the weekend? We refer to that as the Sunday scaries. That can be a particularly heavy thing for people who are burned out. They're not ready for Monday. Are you having more headaches than usual, or have your sleep habits changed? Maybe you're sleeping a lot less or sleeping much more to escape. Have you been having trouble focusing on work and getting your tasks completed, or perhaps having trouble understanding what is expected of you? Are you finding yourself only able to work efficiently at the last minute or against a deadline? You definitely have some people who work well in a procrastination setting, but perhaps if people are burned out, they're putting off every project they have to work on until the very end. Are you avoiding work conversations with colleagues or check-ins with your manager? It can be hard to go to a one-on-one when you just don't want to continue talking about what you're working about, or you're just tired of the work. Do you fantasize about quitting almost constantly? That's a pretty good indication that you are burned out. And are you just too exhausted to do anything fun or interesting when you're not at work? So the impact of burnout that we see in the workplace is absenteeism, and this can look like showing up to work late or calling off frequently to take mental health days, or because people get legitimate frequent illnesses as stress impacts their immune system. Poor performance is another impact of burnout, and this can be low productivity, people aren't getting their work completed, or they're having a really hard time managing an extremely high workload and they're making a lot of mistakes. Sure, we can all think of certain roles where if you're dealing with a high level of workload, it could be easy to be making keying errors or just making other silly mistakes that you wouldn't be making if you had a reasonable workload. Or perhaps they're just putting less effort into work than they're used to, and things are coming out with lesser quality just because their energy to focus on quality work is depleted and they just don't have it in them. And of course, we need to remember mistakes can be detrimental in certain industries. Impact to customer service is another factor of burnout, and studies have shown that employees' demeanor heavily influence customers' perception of the service. If an employee is apathetic and low energy and irritable, that will negatively impact the customer service experience and the customer's perception of your business. not the best face that we want to be facing towards our customers. Resignations, if turnover is increasing, this is strong evidence your organization is in a state of burnout. Exit interviews are key in this scenario. This is something HRBoost helps with a lot, and it can be really helpful, especially to get exit interview feedback from a third party who can be objective and give a good summary of exactly what is causing people to leave. Higher healthcare costs are another factor, and injuries or illnesses tend to get ignored when employees are overworked. Maybe they just don't have time to go to the doctor, or they just figure if they just continue pushing through this quarter, they'll eventually have time to deal with it. And this leads to bigger issues down the road. Burnout can affect safety and cause more workplace injuries, which incurs more workers' compensation cases and lost time. And in worst case scenarios, some industries have a high rate of depression or thoughts or feelings of suicide, such as people in the healthcare industry, specifically doctors and firefighters as well. So now to the important part, what are our solutions to burnout? So number one is to staff your teams and to allocate resources appropriately. I know this is easier said than done, but any other solution is a Band-Aid approach without considering how your teams are staffed. If they are chronically understaffed or people have unreasonable workloads, none of these proposed solutions will have long-term fixes without considering if there are any ways to properly plan and allocate resources for your initiatives and goals. Over-relying on wellness benefits will not improve burnout in the long run if you don't figure out how to staff your teams or to allocate resources to your team so they can work. So an example of this, I'm sure a lot of us have seen this in the workplace. A high-performing employee takes on duties from another employee who has left. Maybe they've resigned, and maybe this high-performing employee is a people pleaser, and they continue to do work for two people for some time with any outward grumbling. They don't want to be seen as a person who says no. And then maybe the hiring manager isn't scrambling to backfill that role because it seems like everything's going pretty well with that high-performing employee handling everything. But over time, without getting that other role backfilled, this eventually starts to burn out the high performer. Perhaps they start to have performance issues, and maybe they start making a lot of mistakes because they're just tired and burned out. Or maybe they start calling off and having absentee issues. Maybe management starts to address this and doesn't recognize what is the main cause of all of these mistakes or performance issues or days off. And it can be a really difficult situation for that employee to be in. I mean, they were just trying to be helpful, but really we need to be staffing our teams appropriately so we don't put some of our people pleasers in that situation. So if we can ensure workloads are reasonable, that helps burnout a lot. And this can mean if something urgent comes up, that sometimes we need to understand that something else needs to be deprioritized if possible. Not always doable for people to plan perhaps 5 projects for a certain quarter, and if something else urgent comes up to take on an additional 1 or 2, that just might end up leading to a burned out employee at the end of the day. Another good note is to keep communications within working hours. This has become more difficult as we've moved to remote work, and working hours are whenever people need to get their work done. But one recommendation is to not send late night emails, as that may cause employees to feel they need to be responding at that moment. And employees who never feel their day is over are on a fast track to burnout. A great suggestion to this is, it doesn't mean you have to stop working at night if that's what works best for you, but you can set the option to delay the email to be sent until the morning. This can feel like a lot less pressure on your team to be responding to your 10 p.m. or even 1 a.m. emails if you're a night owl. And this is even more important, like I mentioned, since remote work has made this boundary even fuzzier or non-existent. It's best if we can support employees in setting an end to their day in their schedule, as remote work may feel as if it never ends. Another helpful thing we can be doing is to support mental health and well-being. And this can show up a lot in the form of benefits. An employee assistance provider, or known as an EAP, often has really great counseling offerings. I would recommend looking into what your benefits offer, but usually it looks like something like 1 to 2 counseling sessions with a provider who can then find the employee a clinician in their area to specifically help them tackle whatever issues they're dealing with. Another recent popular benefit that companies are starting to offer, especially during the pandemic, are subscriptions to telebehavioral health or therapy apps. And this can help to make sure that employees are seeking the help that they need to keep healthy and happy, just like they would go to a doctor's appointment. Meditation apps are another subscription we've been seeing a lot of companies offer to their employees as well, as meditation has been shown to overall help decrease feelings of depression and anxiety and lead to a better balanced employee. Another common benefit are stipends for physical fitness, and we've seen related costs as that has been shown to improve mental health as well. Another great solution to burnout is having employees use paid time off when they need to. And that also comes from management to set examples of wellness by taking their PTO. It's starting to become more popular for companies to use an unlimited PTO policy as an attractive benefit, because that sounds great, taking off as much vacation time as you want. But in reality, it often doesn't look like this. Usually companies who use unlimited PTO tend to encourage a culture of workaholism, because if no one else around you is taking PTO days, you might not feel it's appropriate for you to take a PTO day. And people tend to use their PTO less in these settings. So have an appropriate PTO allotment and encourage employees to use their benefit. This can help to decrease the likelihood of burnout in your workplace. Also, depression or anxiety or other stress-related conditions that are caused by burnout may be covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. So be aware that an accommodation could be requested for an employee who is suffering from depression or anxiety due to burnout. And requesting an accommodation under the ADA due to reasons like this can look like a later starting time, or perhaps days off as needed when the symptoms are just too much to handle, or to accommodate time going to a therapist or doctor's appointments. Also, leave of absence can be a last-ditch effort to help an employee if their burnout has just reached maximum threshold and they just cannot continue on going to the office and doing work every day. And this could look like either a medical or a personal leave, and that just might be what is needed for the employee to help reset before they return back to the workplace and figure out a better long-term solution. Something else that has been a new topic is something called microsteps. And this comes from Arianna Huffington, the author of Thrive, and she discussed this topic at the 2022 SHRM Convention, Society for Human Resource Management. And microsteps are science-backed actions that are too small to fail and can still lead to lasting change. So these can be 60 to 90-second breaks, just as needed to get a break from the mounting stress. And this can all add up to make a macro difference, but yet it still doesn't take as much effort and energy as some bigger efforts, but can still have an impact. Another suggestion from Arianna Huffington at SHRM this year are entry interviews. So the opposite of exit interviews, this would be an interview with new employees. And this would allow employers to understand what makes their employees happy and what do they enjoy doing outside of the workplace. Employers can offer support in these endeavors for their mental well-being, and not only will it set the stage for employees to make decisions to protect their mental health, but this can start off employment on a really good foot, because this can increase retention with employees if they feel that their well-being is paramount to the company and to their performance. And if you're listening to this webinar, you yourself are also an employee, and anybody can be a victim to burnout. Suggestions for employees to consider for themselves are to set boundaries and stick to them. This is becoming increasingly hard in remote roles where it's hard to tell when the day ends. Set clear boundaries on your start or end time, and while it can be normal to stay later here and there if needed, try not to make this a habit. If more is being asked of you that is outside of your role or the hours you are available, you can provide responses such as, I'm unavailable to stay past 5 p.m. or I have other commitments at that time. No need to be more specific. It doesn't matter if the reason to leave is to take your dog out for a walk, or to go pick up your children from childcare, or to go meet up with your friends for a kickball game, because it's all important in your life in the long run. And we don't need to provide any specificities for why we have commitments outside of work. That is completely normal. Another option to offer if people are requesting more of you than what you can handle in your workload is something like, I'm afraid my workload is currently full, but if this is a priority for you, we can determine what else on my plate can be deprioritized to shift focus. So this can help get the message across that you are willing to help. It's just your workload is full. So what else can we deprioritize? Really important for all of our mental health is to limit smartphone time and screen time. And this goes along with setting schedule boundaries, especially if you're someone who's constantly checking work email, even on vacation. But also mindless scrolling impacts our productivity. And spending time on social media has been shown to be detrimental to mental health. The light from the screen before bed also impacts sleep, which leads me to practicing good sleep hygiene. So in America, we have this construct called hustle culture, which is usually accompanied by the motto of, I'll sleep when I'm dead. But in reality, sleep is one of the best things we can do for our health, as it improves cognitive performance and it decreases chances of many conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, anxiety, and it helps maintain our immune system health, which is even more essential when you are in burnout mode. To practice good sleep hygiene, keep your room at night cool and dark, put away the smartphone, cut out caffeine after lunchtime, and it can be helpful to write down a to-do list before you go to bed to clear your mind of your worries and tasks at hand. If you can spend more time focusing on physical and mental health, this is especially helpful. Self-care can fall by the wayside when we are burned out, but making time for self-care activities can be a saving grace. Working out or getting in some physical activity boosts dopamine, which helps relieve depression. Practicing mindfulness and breathing can also help regulate our nervous systems and get our bodies out of fight or flight mode, which is very common when you are burned out. Talking to a therapist to learn more tools and coping skills is also rich in benefits. Also, if you can invest in interests outside of work, this can be a huge factor, as lack of work-life balance can be a big contributor to burnout. Finding hobbies to make sure your attention is drawn to something besides work can help alleviate burnout and can help you build a supportive community outside of work. Speaking of building a community, lack of social support is a factor in burnout as well as depression. Along with the support community outside of work, you can also build one with coworkers, so it's easier to discuss issues that are causing burnout. You can help get suggestions for other resources or to ask coworkers for help, or it's just really helpful to have that one coworker that you can step away from your desk, go for a coffee break, and get a little bit of your frustration vented to somebody else who understands. And lastly, be transparent with your manager because they can't help if they don't know how overloaded you are. They can help offer figuring out how to better balance your workload. Maybe they need to redistribute projects a little bit more. Maybe they can help create better environments for productivity. Maybe that might mean a little bit more time working from home if you find yourself being interrupted a lot at work. Maybe you're the go-to person, everyone's stopping to ask questions, and that can be very hard on productivity, which can cause burnout. Or maybe your manager can help advise with helpful resources to manage your burnout. But thank you so much for joining our webinar on burnout today. Again, I'm Kelly Schrage with HRBoost, and let's connect. Our social media links are on this slide, and you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at HRBoost LLC, and Instagram is NicoleMartin.live. So my wish for all of you is that you better understand how harmful burnout truly can be, and that you better understand how to combat burnout in the workplace as a manager or leader, and understand how important it is to invest in the things up front to stop burnout from permeating your culture, and that you know how to protect yourself from the long-lasting damages of burnout as well. So we hope to see you at future webinars. And thanks again for joining from HRBoost. Until next time.